Billionaire's redemption, a father's second chance. The mansion had never felt so empty. Not even the solemn ticking of the grandfather clock or the hollow echo of footsteps across the marble floors could drown out the silence. 3 golden-haired boys, Ethan, Luke, and Noah, sat huddled together on a plush sofa, barely speaking, as if words themselves had died with their mother. Richard Montgomery, a man whose empire was built on ironclad resolve, wore a suit as dark as his mood. He was there for them, he promised, but his presence was a fleeting thing, a whisper in the night. More often than not, he was in meetings, his face etched with a fatigue that no amount of wealth could erase. He knew his boys needed more than his brief appearances. They needed life. So he hired a nanny. At first, she seemed the perfect solution. Efficient, floors gleamed, silverware sparkled, beds were made with military precision. But she lacked warmth. She hated noise. When Ethan giggled too loudly, she shushed him. When Luke left his toys out, she scolded him. When Noah hummed a song, she silenced him with a glare. One afternoon, Richard returned home earlier than usual. He walked into the living room and froze. A crystal vase lay shattered on the floor, its shards glinting under the chandelier. His 3 sons stood pressed against a wall, pale and trembling. The nanny loomed over them, her voice as sharp as the broken glass. "Do you have any idea what this costs, you little brats? Do you think the world bends for you because of your father's money? One mistake and you ruin everything." Luke's lip quivered. We were just running." "Running," she sneered. "You act like wild animals. Do you think life is a playground?" Richard's chest tightened, a cold fury coursing through his veins. He stepped forward, his voice a low thunder. "Enough." The nanny flinched, startled. "Sir, they don't you ever dare speak to them like that." Richard's voice was filled with a wrath she had never seen. "They lost their mother. And you." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "Pack your things," she stammered. "It was an accident. I only meant to." The boys looked from her to their father, their eyes wide with a relief that hadn't been there in weeks. The nanny left that same evening, muttering apologies under her breath. Richard didn't care. He locked the door behind her, his hand shaking. But the silence returned, louder this time. He tried to fill it, reading bedtime stories, making them breakfast, taking them to the park, but he couldn't do it all. Board meetings piled up. Contracts demanded signatures. Phones rang non-stop. More than once, he found Ethan crying in a corner while Luke tried to hush him, and Noah wandered aimlessly. That night, Richard sat at his desk, his head in his hands. "I can't lose them, too," he whispered to the empty room. "They need help, but not another servant who only taught rules and polished silver. They need someone who loves them." He began his search again. He interviewed dozens of women with pristine resumes, glowing references, and polished manners. They all smiled sweetly, but their eyes were cold and distant. This time, he wasn't looking for expertise. He was looking for something else. During one interview, Ethan tugged on his sleeve. "Dad," he whispered, his eyes on a girl waiting shyly in the corner. She wore a simple blue uniform with a white apron. Her hands were clasped timidly, her brown eyes soft. Richard looked at her. She doesn't even have much experience." "She looks nice," Luke whispered. Noah nodded, hiding half his face behind his brother. Richard studied her, a suspicion hardening in his gaze. "Why do you want this job?" Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "Because children need more than just order. They need someone who listens, who laughs with them. I don't have polished references, sir, but I have a heart, and I don't believe children should forget how to smile." The room went quiet. The boys didn't say anything more, but their eyes pleaded with him. For the first time in months, he didn't trust in logic, money, or reputation. He trusted their looks. Richard exhaled, slow and heavy. "Start tomorrow." And that's how Claire stepped into their lives. Her first days in the mansion were a quiet grace. She moved gently through the rooms, careful not to overstep. At first, Richard barely noticed her, only in passing, setting up plates, folding laundry, picking up toys. But the boys noticed. They noticed everything. "Claire, will you play blocks with me?" Ethan asked one afternoon, shyly, holding out a piece. She smiled, getting on her knees. "Of course, but only if you promise to teach me how to build a tower taller than you." The boy giggled, an unfamiliar sound that caught Richard's ear from the hallway. He stopped, listening. Soon, Luke and Noah joined in, and laughter filled the room again. By the end of the week, the nights had changed. Instead of silence and stern faces, there were whispers, pillow fights, and eager little voices begging, "Dad, can you read us a story tonight?" Richard would glance at the doorway where Claire always stood quietly, her hands clasped, as if she wasn't sure if she belonged. He read anyway, amazed at how easily his boys leaned against him again, their eyes bright. By day 10, the mansion didn't sound empty. It felt alive. Still, a shred of doubt gnawed at Richard. Was this real, or was she just playing a part to keep her job? He had trusted before and been burned. He couldn't risk his son's fragile hearts. That morning, he left for the office, as usual, briefcase in hand. But halfway through his day, he made a decision. He slammed his laptop shut, ignored his buzzing phone, and drove back home hours earlier than expected. The front door swung open. What he saw froze him where he stood. In the middle of the living room, Claire was on all fours, her bright blue dress hiked against the carpet. Clinging to her back were his 3 golden-haired sons, each in their striped shirts, squealing with laughter. "Giddy up, Harsey, faster, Claire," Noah cried, clinging to her shoulders. Her hair had fallen loose from beneath her cap as she crawled across the rug, laughing as the boys cheered her on. Their laughter was so loud, so alive, that Richard's chest tightened. His quiet boys, who hadn't smiled in months, were radiating with pure joy. He stepped inside, slowly. The nanny element didn't see him yet, but the boys did. "Daddy," Ethan yelled, jumping off Claire's back. He ran to Richard, tugging his hand. "Come play with us." Luke and Noah followed, wrapping themselves around his legs until he almost stumbled. "Please," they begged, their voices rising. "Daddy, you be a horse, too." Richard blinked, his throat dry. What's going on here?" Claire's head snapped up, her smile vanishing. She froze, her hands clenching to the floor, her eyes wide with fear. She stood quickly, retreating to a corner, her face pale. "I'm so sorry, sir," she whispered, trembling. "I shouldn't have," they asked, "and I didn't want to upset them." Richard cut her off with a raised hand. His boys tugged harder on his arms, their laughter not dimming. "Dad, please, just one ride. Just one." For a long moment, the billionaire didn't move. The weight of his world, his meetings, his empire, his reputation dragged against him. But then he saw Ethan's pleading eyes, Luke's wide smile, Noah's small arms clinging to his legs. He hadn't seen them this alive since before their mother had died. Without another word, Richard dropped his briefcase. He loosened his tie, got down on the floor, and let his sons climb onto his back. Their laughter roared through the house. Claire stood frozen in the corner, her heart pounding. She expected anger, dismissal, maybe even a door slammed in her face. Instead, she watched the man who never bent for anyone crawl on all fours, letting his sons ride on his back, laughing with them. When the game ended and the boys tumbled onto the carpet, breathless with joy, Richard finally looked at Claire. She braced herself, ready for the worst, but his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "You didn't teach them to break the rules, Claire. You taught them how to live again." Her breath caught, so I'm not fired. He shook his head slowly, his eyes heavy but kind. "No, you've done more in 10 days than anyone else could. You gave me my sons back." Then Richard leaned forward, his voice firm but warm. "You're not going anywhere, are you, boys?" The 3 sons broke into a fit of giggles, nodding eagerly, their little voices chiming. "Right." They threw their arms around Claire, clinging to her with pure joy, as if sealing a promise. For the first time in years, the mansion no longer felt like a prison of silence. It felt like home. Do you believe children can feel love more clearly than adults?